All right. Well, welcome to another Advisor's Edge. It's really fun to get to interview different folks and see what's coming along. And of course, we've got Chuck here. How are you doing today, Chuck?
Just fine. Always good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Who gets to join us today is Mark Gilbert, co-founder and CEO of Zocks. Hopefully, most of the people know kind of who Zocks is, one of those leading AI companies in the financial services. But what's the elevator explanation for you, Mark?
For us, Zocks. If you don't know who we are, we're a AI assistant specifically for financial advisors. So really started around meetings and helping people prep and follow up for meetings. Now we do things like fill out plans, fill out forms, let you look across your book of business with queries, all these different things. But yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this is good, and it's always. AI is always high in the conversation out there, right? And coming up a lot. So our goal with the Advisor's Edge is to be informative and encouraging to advisors. So I think we'll hit some on both of those. And one of the great things about co-hosting with Chuck is that he asks some great questions specifically from the advisor perspective. So we'll get into all of the kind of things, and it'll go wherever we need to go. But start out, Mark, for you, because you've worked at Microsoft, Hearsay, Twilio, and then of course you co-founded Zocks. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, so it's a bit of I think as everyone's career is always a bit of a unique journey. I spent quite a while at Microsoft building out a lot of their enterprise platforms. So initially what was .NET, a lot of the developer platforms, Windows Server, System Center, and then eventually Azure as we launched that. So I spent quite a while there, learned a ton about enterprise services, enterprise software, frankly, just how to scale teams as well. It's a great place to learn. And it's awesome to see Microsoft kind of continuing to, stay at the forefront for a company that's no longer young. So it's great. Then just as you mentioned, I was at a company called Hearsay Social. When I joined, it was fairly small at that point. We worked, for those who don't know it, it's really a system focused purely on financial services and insurance. Initially, that helped everyone use social media in the field, so advisors, agents, in a way that really kind of helped to get your brand out, connect with your clients and everything else, and then expanded beyond that. So I was there for quite a while, built up that company, initially running the product organization and building it, then as the CTO. And then I went to Twilio. And it's funny because Zocks is really, if you think about it, kind of the culmination of those three things coming together, where we are more and more an enterprise platform. We are focused purely on financial services. And a lot of that came from all the learnings at Hearsay. And just, when you look at what we call vertical SaaS, you can do so much more for advisors by really tailoring the software for them. And then Twilio is all around communication. So I ran, essentially what's called the communication network, the super networker, for all their communication services around the world. Was the exec sponsor for a number of companies that were frankly banks and insurers and wanted to get information from conversations. So we started Zocks almost 4 years ago now. We actually launched 2 years ago last week, the product. And it's both gone by very fast, but also seems very long. And we, really started off building a platform, built for quite a while, and then did an early adopter program later in 2023 with a lot of advisors, actually quite a few, and then launched about 2 years ago now, really initially with the goal of helping advisors, helping capture the data that they want from conversations with clients to help them prepare for the next one, help them follow up more, frankly, just allow them to focus on the clients and save them a lot of time. And then what ends up happening after you do that for a little bit is that you get this really valuable structured data around the clients. We connect in with other systems like the CRM system, the planning systems, the portfolio management systems, custodians, quite a lot of these different groups now. And then we use that both to populate those systems to just, save them from having to type in all this data. And then the context from those systems allows us to do more and more for the advisors. So now we're doing things like opening accounts with some of our larger customers, filling out insurance forms, filling out planning systems, things like that as well. Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting you talk about structured data, which conversations are with clients. Chuck would know this better than me, particularly more unstructured as they so I don't know. How do you bridge that? Right? Yeah, that's maybe too hard of a question, or maybe a stupid question. I don't know.
No, it's a great question. And it's funny, I always use that phrase. It's a very computer science phrase. Like structured data normally refers to like, frankly, databases and things you can query versus like, flat files or big blobs of data. So we use that from the start, but that is a lot of the system, right? Is that we can obviously take it and make what seem like human notes, right? So if Chuck was, let's say, meeting with me as a client, it can articulate everything and importantly do it the way he wants. But in addition to that, it allows us to query across and say like, tell me everyone who has 3 or more children and blah, 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 right? Tell me everyone who lives here or lives there, owns a business and has or doesn't have this type of account or product. And I think what we're seeing is, again, at the start, it's really around saving time, getting rid of the reactive work. But now that you start to get that structured data, people are able to close more business with it. And then, frankly, they're able to start anticipating the client's needs, which is kind of the happy spot, right? Is that you could meet with a client, chat with them for a while, follow up on things. And then let's say, 4 months later, the system will nudge you and tell you, hey, Mark was about to go do this thing or said 4 months ago, this may be interesting to him. Do you want to reach out now? And, you really kind of need structured data to do that. And AI is the bridge between those two. That's why it's, what we can do today was just not possible 10 years ago.
Yeah,
it is amazing how quickly this is evolving. So, Mark, as you know, we've met a couple of times before. You've been on the Go RIA show. And I think I mentioned to you, we're in the process of looking at you guys actually for Sovereign, right? So we want to adopt something. So we're looking at you guys and of course, all the other usual suspects. Nick Titi from our office who runs operations for our shop is going to be doing so at Orion, in fact. So here's sort of a broad question that I have. As far as your take on providing AI services for financial advisors, how is it, or is it different than, let's say, Jump or some of the other players that are out there?
Yeah, I think we have a fairly unique view, and kind of as you look at the different platforms evolve, what we're doing. And I would say Jump is frankly probably a little closer to us than some of these like kind of note takers that are attached to existing systems. But our view very much is, client meetings, matter a lot. I think there's a lot of just fantastic data that comes out of that. And I think my guess is Jump would agree with that as well. What we do is we really connect with a whole bunch of systems and kind of overlay them well. So not just the CRM system, but as we look at connecting with eMoney, Red Capital, these other planning systems, the Orions, Holista Plans, all of these, Wealth.com, we just announced recently. Mm-hmm. A lot of the other systems will connect in with those as well, but they will often put notes in those systems, right? To say, hey, I did this or this. Getting back to the structured data question, we can literally go in and fill out now like over 300 data points in eMoney. And so what that does is it allows you to really like get from a discussion to a proposed plan, if you will, in a few minutes. And so we now have clients that have literally one we talked to 2 weeks ago, and they got a client with a little over 5 million of their assets in 2 meetings. And they said this never would have happened before, but they met them because of the system. They already had eMoney filled out and fully populated with all the data. And so when the client came back in, they could start playing with it. And the person was clearly hungry to get going on things. And they said because they had all the information there, the plans developed, everything else, they could basically start to put alternatives in front of them and really outline what is this going to look like for you. And it's as they put it to us, so like before, that'd be a 4 to 6 hour job for one of our associates, and we just don't have enough of them to do it for every prospect. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing for us, is that we just go very deep on the data and then get, start to do more and more to really kind of drive the business versus, just the client meeting, if that makes sense. And
yeah,
a lot of people are just starting. So it's tricky. They're like, okay, where, do I start with this or this? Like there's a lot. And, I think the advice we give everyone, and I think, the other usual suspects, as you put it, would probably be the same, is like, start with something, start to get going on it. Like it's going to change the industry pretty drastically, very quickly, just as we see the forward-leaning people and how they're, just how they're operating their businesses. It's already starting to change pretty quickly. So,
yeah. Well, I think we saw a good example of this just, was it yesterday with Wank and Altruist? I mean, talk about disrupting markets. Did you guys see that news?
I didn't see that news. What bring us up to speed there?
Yeah. So he's launching this AI within Altruist that does something pretty phenomenal with taxes, I guess. And it literally brought the value of Raymond James and Schwab and I think LPL
like I think
down
60%.
meaningfully. Yeah.
In one day.
Yeah. You know, Jason's been on the show a couple of times as well. That's got to be a pretty substantial feeling, right? To quote the PE guy.
You know,
markets, holy smoke. That must have been kind of an interesting day for him. But the other question I do have for you, Mark, is this: how do you guys look at it? So my day as the advisor, I generally start in my client portal, which we have built on Salesforce.
Oh.
In the Zocks ecosystem, would I be starting my day in Zocks and then Zocks is tying into my Salesforce and eMoney and everything else? If you could just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a super good question. And the quick answer is today, the vast majority of our clients would, if you're about to go meet with clients, which is where a lot of people kind of start their day, a lot of them would go into Zocks to do that. I would say like the vast majority of our clients would. One of the other differences with us, and I think quite a lot of the other providers out there, is we are a platform. And so we can plug in to these other systems. And so we have today, InvestCloud is used in very large enterprises typically. We have integrations with them. So like if you're an InvestCloud user, you can actually just literally sit in InvestCloud, get prepared for meetings, look at the results, start to get insights, all of that. Excuse me, you'll see the same thing come out for Salesforce and Dynamics actually shortly. And then, there are systems that we think are really powerful, like Adapar, right? Where some people will sit in those systems. And so for us, it's really about the data and starting to streamline for the advisor and their teams as much as we can. And if that information should be sitting in another system for good reason, we're totally good with that. And so, today the vast majority of people do sit inside of Zocks doing that as they do these things. But my guess is if we're talking 6 or 12 months from now, we'll have a reasonable amount of them that are really sitting in whatever that, like essentially whatever their, what we call advisor desktop would be. And that's totally good for us. Cause like one of the funny things we always see with any, I think, new system as we talk with people is they're very excited about it, but very few advisors want yet another system. I'll just say, they're like, we have a lot
without question.
Yeah. And so that's where it's like, okay, that's one of the reasons too, that we've designed Zocks to be a very easy overlay. So you can go in, you can bring it up in like, a few minutes, frankly, get it going. And we've chosen not to rip out other systems at all and try to replace those with AI. Like, we will populate eMoney fully. We will use all the data from Orion. We will Holistic Plan's a fantastic tax system, all of those things. We basically more like, choreograph the data moving around and all of that makes sense.
It does. I mean, at some point we're going to do a demo because I'm still having a hard time getting my head around that, but I'd be curious on how that works. So are you saying that in 6 months or so, people could choose, if we want to choose to still live in our Salesforce based chassis platform, we could do that, but it's powered in some way by Zocks? Is that how you envision it?
Start to see widgets just show up in Salesforce, right? So as an example, in Zocks today, there is the concept of contact, right? So if let's say again, I'm your client, you've met with me maybe 4 or 5 times, you can go in, you can ask questions, and it won't just go through your meeting data, but it's actually going to go through eMoney, it's going to go through Holistic Plan, it's going to go through all these different systems, like to answer those questions, to fill out forms, to intake me, whatever you want to do.
Right.
It's very powerful, but there's no reason you need to sit in Zocks to do that. Like you could easily go put the same button, in the account, in the household account, or in a contact in Salesforce. And so you'll see more and more of that. And if you ever see the Zocks UI has all these like kind of nice little squares, rectangles around it. You can probably see how some of those will essentially just start to like populate indirectly. And so we're doing that with some clients today, some larger ones that really want to do that. Those people can also go to Zocks directly if they want. Like the way that the platform works is if we're showing up in Salesforce, that's great. If for some reason you want to go into Zocks because there's some interaction you want, whatever else, that's great. We're really not kind of worried about it one way or the other.
Yeah. Is it, you mentioned some different things, like different challenges for the advisors in the AI space. And I think you said maybe the biggest one is just getting started. Is that right? Or what, walk me through, if you would, if I'm an advisor and I get in there, I start using Zocks, and then what's the next challenge that comes up? Just to give a little perspective to help understand what to expect and how should we prepare for something like that?
Yes, we made it super easy to use Zocks, as I mentioned right out of the gate. Like people always ask us, like, "Hey, how much training do we need? What does the onboarding process look like?" And the reality is, like, you could just kind of go right away.
Mm-hmm.
The question after that typically becomes, like, how else can we or AI help your practice? And so sometimes that is, some firms have very structured ways of meeting with clients. Like they may say, hey, we have these 5 different meetings a year for, right? They're like, we'll do a tax meeting, we'll do a, overall portfolio summary, we'll do a goals review, those things. So all of that can go inside of the system. And then, and sometimes they'll spend, a bit of time on that, or we'll do that with them very often. Other times there are certain, I would say, kind of like front office to back office workflows that are very expensive for them. Again, like intaking clients is a common one. So in that case, they'll use like our document intelligence plus a few forms and then start to like automate that. The interesting thing is the technology, like, it's very easy to set it up and get it going. It's a lot more just kind of like getting the teams, understanding like, okay, who does what and what do I do now? And as you'd imagine, we always get, for good reason, a lot of questions around like security, privacy, like how does that work? What controls do I have? What should we be doing? And so we've gotten a lot more, I would say, kind of directive on that as well. Like we have a huge number of controls on all of those things, but especially as we've been working with larger and larger enterprises, they have, different policies for different people in the firm and all of those things as well. So we get a lot of questions around that. And that, I think that's probably one of the harder things for a lot of firms as they look at AI. I think like we would love to say, hey, just look for this certification or logo and you're good or you're not. But the reality is like this is some of the most private data that they have with their clients. And it really matters that they're thoughtful around like where it is, who has access to it, and what they even want to retain, frankly.
Yeah.
Could we pivot to emails for just a minute? Because that's sort of top of mind for me. And literally, as we get on board with this long weekend, I'm trying to clear out my inbox, and it's getting really hard to do. I'm sure you have some way to help me with that, but please tell me what it is, because it's getting to be onerous to me.
Yeah. So one of the things that we did, when we started, it was really around, as I mentioned, meetings. And then once we have the AI system and the platform up and running, we really started to work through where are the biggest areas that people are spending their time and frankly losing time in a way that is administrative, very often reactive, and not adding a ton of client value. And one of the ones is the two that came up very, very quickly after meetings. One was replying to emails, and then the other one was basically doing intakes and filling out forms. So replying to emails, we have a capability now where we can scan your inbox. If there's an email from somebody that we know as a client, so they're in your CRM system, they have like records in your other systems. We actually can go in, take that email, draft a reply for you, and we'll sit that in a drafts mode. It sits inside of Zocks. We also have an Outlook plugin, so you can use the Outlook plugin if you want. And you can see it there. Make any edits you want, and then hit send. It's coming out of your system, so any replies go directly back to you. If you have compliance, supervision, archiving hooked up, it'll respect all of those things. And what we find, and we found especially early on building that part of the product, was there's a fair amount of data you need before you can answer the majority of emails. So when we first tried it, we could frankly reply to about 40% of them just through like CRM data and previous conversations. Once we started to get in either the planning system, the reporting system, like an Orion or any of those, that jumped up to about 75%. And then with Holistiplan, that actually went up to about 85%. And it makes sense. A lot of the questions you get are like, hey, do I have this or this? Some of it's just like, what was I supposed to do after we met last? I forgot, right? Some of it is like, hey, there's this event going on in my life. I'd love some input or just to know what to do. And other times questions around like kind of either the portfolio or the holdings or the strategy. And so it'll pull from all those different systems and essentially, draft answers for those. And we find, and you probably use more than this, just given your role, but we find that even the associates were spending 1 to 2 hours a day, literally just like, taking a client email, being like, okay, what do we need to do? You have to go to 2 to 3 different systems to figure out what's going on with this client, right? Like, are we supposed to meet again? When are we meeting next? Were they supposed to do something? All of those, and all of that can just get answered by the system. And then it'll do things like mimic, how casual you are with that client, how formal you are, things like that, just so it
That was going to be my other question, right? So I use Chat GPT all the time, and I just love it. And it's gotten to know me. Like, it's gotten to be like a real personal good friend of mine, honestly. I mean, I just love it. And one of the reasons why I don't look at other systems is it's got all this institutional knowledge about me as a person and my business and so on and so forth. So with regards to the email, because I love that aspect of this, it does start learning how I like to talk, because sometimes when you see these automated responses, it's clear to me that it was AI generated and sounds nothing like how that person normally talks.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a few different factors there. One is just your style, right? So I'd say like you're a relatively casual, I mean, like approachable, casual. Sometimes the person you're communicating with will change that, right? So sometimes I'll mail people very casually. Sometimes it'll feel a lot more formal for a variety of reasons. I don't know them as well, maybe their role or something like that. So it'll grab both of those and do that. And then the other one is the topic itself, right? So like if someone is asking for some simple stuff, you have probably a fairly casual answer. If some of the things are very specific, right? Like they want to know exactly what they have in a certain situation, even it sounds funny, but like booking meetings and stuff like that, right? Like you want to make sure the date, the time, like is it in person, not all that's there. And so the system will learn from you in that. And part of it is it can also look at your communications with that client before. So, that gives us a pretty good idea of what it should look like. And then we also actually have this concept of templates. So if you do have certain types of emails that are coming in regularly, like questions on things, hey, I may need to get some money out, hey, like, prospects, like you're trying to essentially get them onboarded and things like that. You can even take those and be more specific and say, hey, in this situation, like I always want to kind of sound this way, or I always want to make sure this information is there. So it does very well out of the gate. That's one of the great things, I think, with AI is it can take the context and understand, but then the more you want to tailor it, you can as well. And then there's also in a handy way, there's also like sharing in that. So you don't have to give your whole team access to your whole inbox. But if you do have people on the team and you're like, these are these clients, they can, like the rest of Zocks, start to see some of that information and share it as well. Because you may say like, I don't like anybody grab this and start to draft a reply. Right. Without having to like essentially expose your whole, email inbox to them.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me just have one more follow-up question on this, because
yeah.
I'm trying to take advantage and do my due diligence here.
Oh, yes. This is great.
Two things at once. Last question on the emails, just because it is really, I'm trying to keep track of where am I spending all this time, because I feel like I'm running thin, and it's emails. The context for the emails, does Zocks or can Zocks look at my entire Office 365, or is it only that which I log to my CRM? So we, as I'm sure you know, Mark, we can choose to log every single email to our Salesforce. We choose not to do that because I don't want every, hey, how's it going? It's great. So we just selectively, like, this is a pertinent email. This is a pertinent one. We log that. So does Zocks look at only the emails that are living in Salesforce that I chose to have memorialized, or can it look through all of them in Office 365?
So it can do all of them, and it's really your choice. So for a lot of our clients, I would say the default is that we connect into Office 365 and go there directly. We don't, the first thing we look at again is this a client? So like if your spouse is mailing you something about dinner or whatever else, we, just immediately kind of ignore it. Some people do just hook it up to the CRM for a few different reasons, right? So they can say, okay, Zocks, just look at like the Salesforce emails under this, and that's totally fine. But I would say by default, most people hook up Office 365 just because it gives them a bit more context on like style and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the important things as well, getting back to our data security and privacy, is we don't copy those emails or do anything with them. We really use them and analyze them when we're replying to something. So like, the day you hook up, let's say Zocks to Office 365, it's not groveling through everything looking for things. It's if I then emailed you, it would look quickly and be like, oh, here's Mark. We know Mark. Like, let's draft an email reply to Mark, right? Or if you're going to have a meeting with me, then it'll go through and say like, what do we know about Mark? Oh, like you've talked to Mark a few times in the last year, right? You saw him at Future Proof. He did these different things. And so it can kind of give you all that context.
Nice. Is it because you're talking about if you hook it up to Microsoft 365, we have Salesforce also. It's funny how similar we're structured, even though we're not an RIA as Sovereign is. But is it going and checking in that cell in Salesforce to say this is identified as a client or a prospect, or so it can give us that context too, or is that not?
Yeah. So yeah, that is exactly what it's doing. So we'll go in and start to look, first of all, and like, do we have context on who this person is, right? At all.
Yeah.
That's why, especially with our email product, like generally, privacy is a big aspect of what we do. And I think it's important, right? Not just for us, but like, Chuck, you were just talking about like ChatGPT and how effective it can get, and kind of gets to know you more and more. Like these systems are huge and can start to see a lot of different things. And so we explicitly, if something comes in and we don't know who that person is, we explicitly don't like try to reply or go in deep on it at all. We just kind of like ignore it, frankly. It's only really when we see, oh, this is a client or a prospect, like you have some professional relationship with this person in Salesforce. If you have your wife in Salesforce, we'll probably start to really, draft replies and things like that. But assuming you don't, or if you have a meeting with them, right, on your professional calendar. And that's also why you can do things like say, hey, we want you to pull a calendar from Outlook, from Office 365, or we actually want you to pull it from Salesforce or something in the CRM system, because some people will, set that up differently just in the way they operate.
I just thought something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Shoot.
The other
go
thing
for
I
it.
keep doing, absolutely cannot stand doing, is finding a time for more than me and someone else to meet.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
smoke, I hate that. So Outlook has this really cool tool where I can click off and say like, hold off, Tuesday at 3, Wednesday at 4, whatever, and then send it to people. But people don't always get how to use that, right?
Yeah.
Could I have Zocks say, look at my calendar and offer these 4 people 4 slots that are also free for me, block them off so I don't double book, and then let me know what time slot works best for them?
Yeah, so there's 2 things
Zocks
there.
here, by
You
the
can
way,
today,
but
like,
awesome.
because we can see your calendar, so we'll go in and just say, hey, like, here are 3 times Chuck's available next week or whatever. One of the things that is coming out shortly is the ability to actually just have the system go back and forth on that. Because what we see, a lot of people use a system like Calendly.
Yeah.
And Calendly's a good system. But some people don't love sending clients links and saying like, hey, find a time. It gets much harder, to your point, if there's like 3 or 4 different people, right, in that world.
Yep.
And so what it will do is it'll essentially look at your calendar, say, hey, here are some options. And then it'll handle the back and forth. And to be clear, this isn't out yet, but it's like we're already, I would say pre-baiting it with a few different customers. It'll go back and forth with the clients and say, hey, here's when Chuck's available. And they may come back and say like, okay, yeah, that's not whatever, like those 3 don't work, but that one does, in which case it can actually like go in and mark it up for you. Or this is the part that's kind of the more tricky part. If those don't work, at some point we need to come back to you and say, hey, Chuck, like I know you're meeting with, Alice, Fred, and Bob. They can't make these times work, but they can make these 2 other times works in here, and here are your conflicts, right? And then you can decide like, it's not going to work. We're out another week, or like, oh, I can move that. It's an internal meeting or something like that.
And is Zocks emailing back and forth in the background without me?
In that one, it will. That'll be the first time, if you let us, that we will actually kind of fully start to go. Today, everything with Zocks is, and this will still be an option for all of these things, is advisor or their team in the loop. So we will never automatically send an email. In that situation, we'll actually start to get more intelligent or more automated, if you will, on that and go, because it's frankly a relatively low stakes thing. Like, I think things like account openings or plan, like all of that's going to have, the advisor and their team in the loop.
That'd be nice.
Foreseeable future.
Will it have the ability to block off those 4 suggestions so that way someone doesn't book one of those 4 while we're waiting on those?
These are the exact details we're playing with now. Like one of the interesting things I'll tell you when we started Zocks is like, the amount of configurations that people have in, like, let's say an office of 3 people, right? Like maybe an associate, an advisor, an assistant, where they're like, oh, it's my Zoom account, but it's your calendar, but our calendar comes out of Redtail, but ours comes out of Outlook, but don't look at my Outlook because it's all my kids' soccer practices. Like, it's this like, and so I would say the same is there with calendaring, like almost times 10, and especially when you get things like time zones in there, right? So a lot of our clients are, multi-time zone. So that's where we're like, do you want it to block? Do you not? Like to prep it that way. When do you want to bubble it up, right? To say, like, one of the things that's important throughout our system for everything we do is it's all auditable. So you can go in and say, like, hey, when we filled out whatever your address in this form, that actually came out of the CRM system, or that came out of this email, or your discussion, wherever it came out of. And so the same thing will happen here, right? So you'll be able to go in and be like, oh, that's weird, I'm meeting with them at 2:30. Like, what? And then you can click, or it's weird that went out 3 weeks. Why is that 3 weeks? I wanted it to be next week. And
Right.
so you'll be able to look through and essentially say what happened there. And was it because like there were no times or whatever else? But the tricks are like, what do we block? How do you set up your ranges that you're happy with? Like, a lot of people are like, hey, I meet with clients between this time and this time, or these days, but not Friday, not Monday, whatever. Like, all of those kind of like background context and rules.
Yeah.
Getting that. And that's not too hard. We have most of that done now, but essentially just getting it so like it's really flowing is a big piece. And honestly, for us, it started with, just as you said, people are burning a lot of time on it. And some people are using systems like Calendly, and those are great. And I would say if you're using those, like, that's awesome, just keep doing it. But a lot of people, either because of the multi-party problem, or they just don't, especially people dealing with high net worth and ultra high net worth, they don't really want to send them a link to say find time.
Right.
Like, a lot of them honestly want to start with like, let me know what time you have in the next week or two, and then start to work through and see, like, is there anything we can find there? So
yeah, no, that's a great use case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested now because, managing emails for me and my team is a real challenge. Is it modular? So you say, hey, Zocks is, because it sounds pretty great, just getting the Zocks email calendar support. Can you get that, or is it all one package when you go?
Yeah, today it's interesting. We don't have the calendar piece launched yet, so you can't get any of it. But the email today, so today we do bundle. We do have the pieces modularized in the sense of, like, some people just use this for meetings, some people use this for meetings and plannings and forms, and some people use this for like what we call document intelligence. We have this capability to create client lists, like it just queries across everything. Those essentially are building into bigger packages. We are looking at, like, do we break these into smaller groups? Do we start looking at, like, we want to make it as consumable, as easy to consume, I would say, as possible for advisors, without having this like crazy menu of like, here are 53 different things you want.
Right.
So that's kind of how we're looking at the packages now and how they work. But today it is, outside of the meeting aspects, like today it just kind of builds and builds on itself.
That's cool. Wow. Yeah, you've moved along a lot more than I just 6 months ago.
It's moving quick. I think there's this funny, I don't know what to call it, like article going around the Silicon Valley crew, I would say right now, like all the investors around, just like, there's been a lot of these updates to both Anthropic and OpenAI. And specifically for us, which is interesting because a lot of us grew up in this space in the coding area, and just what's happened. And it, like, the interesting thing with AI is when you look at it, it's this kind of like just regular exponential climb up this curve. I think as humans in the world, you kind of forget about it day to day because you just keep doing your things. Then all of a sudden it hits a threshold. And then, like, this thing that was just not possible now unlocks. And we're seeing a lot of that now, right? So, like, I think 2 years ago, it was things like self-driving, multimodal, like those are, like, it's still weird. We live in San Francisco, and so we deal with this all the time and have for years, but like, we have friends come into town and they're just like, oh my gosh. Now you look at this, and it used to be like you would tell it to do little things for you. Now there's more and more that we can do that are end to end. And a lot of that is, we have the, I would say, like, kind of the pipeline, the data pipeline and platform to be able to look across these systems. Like, the reality with most financial advisors is, like, they have a lot of really good systems. There's a huge amount of really good software out of there. It just takes a lot of time to get data into it and get it out of it. And because that's very human oriented, and everyone is kind of capital constrained, and a lot of people don't want to be managing a ton of people as well, just from the way their businesses work, it allows us to really get a lot more value out of those systems for the advisors without having to, like, pile the time in. That's where.
How about strategically as an advisor? Because I imagine you see, and we don't need any horror stories, but you might have some interesting stories. I imagine you see certain advisors when they come in and they get started, and it's just like walking through, I don't know, concrete, and other ones where they get in and it's just like, oh, this is great, and they just hit the ground running.
Yeah.
What, from a strategic standpoint, and obviously this would be helpful for Zocks, but probably with any AI platform tool, what can they do from a strategic standpoint to develop in this world where we do have AI, which every 6 months, 3 months, things are changing so quickly? How do we get better at that?
I would say the big thing, and you can see this, right? Like, Chuck was just mentioning with ChatGPT, like, start using the things. It's much easier to use them. And then as they improve, you'll start to, like kind of incrementally use them. What we notice so we have a lot of capabilities in the platform to help explain things, right? Which is like, hey, why do you think this is true? Or where did this data come from or anything else? We see those used very heavily in the first 8 weeks. And when we've done customer interviews on it, it's almost always they're building trust in the system, right? Like people are like, I don't know, anywhere from I don't know if the AI is correct to I don't know if I'm using it right. It doesn't matter. They're just trying to build trust. Once they get it going and into the workflow, everyone starts to get a lot quicker on essentially what's there, you know what I mean, and what's going. So I would say, like, I think the role is going to change a lot. I think people who are connected to their customers and understand their needs and can frankly work their clients through a lot of the life events and life changes that people go throughout life, which is where all these financial things matter. Honestly, I think those people are going to be able to scale well beyond where they are today with, like without necessarily massive teams, and probably have 2 to 3 times the number of clients or the business that they would have had 5 years ago. And it's going to seem normal to them.
Yeah. Wow.
But you do, like, if you think through, like, we just mentioned the altruist thing earlier. If you think through, like, if it cost you $20, to do taxes for your client, or it cost you $10 to, fill out a financial plan for them, like, what would you be doing more of? And I think a lot of the service people offer today is because of just the time it takes, right? They're like, I can only do so much for you.
Yeah.
If you talk to every client, they would rather the advisor just do it versus the advisor give them homework. The homework should really be like, you need to think about your estate and stuff like that, or whatever, your goals, not like doing work. And those things are going to get simpler and simpler. Just simpler and simpler. And so I think a lot of people just need to start thinking, like, what does that world look like for them? And again, I think people are going to build fantastic businesses with it, but it's going to change quite a lot.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think also one of the best use cases for AI in our industry is compliance. Are you guys touching upon anything for that?
It's so weird. So when we started, I was right where you were, right? I'm like, this is like such a powerful tool for compliance because, a lot of people now, well, we're all supposed to keep tons of notes on everything, right? Like, it's hard. You don't always do that. In larger firms, they literally have the advisors fill out these like CRM forms on like, did you do this for 100 of your clients at the end of the year? So like, yep. So like, it saves a bunch of time. It gets more accurate. It allows you to like detect gray areas more, which frankly allows the firms to show that they're working with the advisors, which is very important with the regulators. But we haven't, like, the answer is we do a lot. We actually have like scorecards. We can deploy all this stuff for things like Reg BI and all of that. It's not a driver for the vast majority of firms. The one thing I would say that is a slight counter one is we're seeing more and more of it now, like where the compliance people, I think they were probably a little bit more worried about like, what's happening and what's going on. And now that they're understanding it. And then the other one I would say, which is just a small piece of data, but pretty relevant, is anybody who's been through an audit, like, will kind of death grip onto the system, right? They're just like, oh, just because it's that, right? Like they're doing things, they know they're doing everything in their client's best interest, but someone will come in and be like, hey, there's something on your calendar where you met with them 6 months ago for 10 minutes and you have no notes on what you talked about. And they're like, oh, they just wanted to confirm this thing. And so like for them, it's great. So those are the two things, but I would expect, and we are seeing some compliance systems, I think, focus purely on compliance, like not Zocks, but like, to help do more supervision, help make it a lot more efficient. A lot of firms, that's one of their bottlenecks is like every time they add any, electronic system, they have to do compliance on it. So I think those are having more and more impact, but we don't, we are, I would say, just starting to see early, like they're in a very early adopter cycle where I would have thought they would have been there about 1.5 years, 2 years ago.
Wow. There's a lot to think about here.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
Exciting time. It's a great time to build your business. It's a great time to, like we talk to a lot of advisors, and we hear this all the time. Like our Matt Holleran, who's, our kind of our main evangelist now, goes out and chats with people all the time and everything else.
Oh,
and
that's right.
It's amazing how much everyone's just like, I love this thing. It's changed my life. And he's like, it's not even their business, but their life. And so we talk to advisors a lot, especially ones farther in career, who would be like, I would be, especially like leaders of these RIAs and things, where they're like, I would be doing this today with clients still if we had this, because like it removes all the stuff I don't love. And it just, it lets me focus on what I love, which is working with clients. And so for people who maybe feel a little overwhelmed or anything else, like, it's very easy to start. It's very easy to get going, whether you're using a system like ours, whether you use, kind of like the more kind of broad horizontal chat systems. They're all good. Just start to get used to it. The one thing I would say is just make sure you're looking at the data security piece a lot, because, like this has some of the most private data that you and your clients trust is kind of the bedrock of everything. So, but yeah, there's a lot going on, but it's a fun time too. It's a fun time.
Well, I think hopefully that's encouraging, because it is a fun time when we get in there and we can serve clients better. I think we all want to do that every day, which is great. So we're gonna wrap up. I think we could keep going for a long time, but I know we all got plenty of things on our to-do list today, and we like to kind of close with the question that's more personal. Make sure we know you, Mark, and how do you think? What do you want to be known for is really the essence of the question. When you look back, obviously Zocks, you're doing some great things in the financial services, but when you sit back, big picture, and people talk about you, what do you want them to say about you?
That is a good question that, I don't know, probably should have thought through more earlier in my career, I would say. So I'm pretty transparent, I would say. Like, I love building things. And the thing that gives me the most excitement at Zocks, and I think throughout my career, is using technology to help, like, frankly, help people, like enjoy their job more, be more effective, especially people and industries that I would say struggle at times to use new technologies because of compliance, because of all those different things. And so, I think if we can play a leadership role in that, or I can play a leadership role in that in a responsible way, because I do think the industry is going to go through a huge amount of change. And I'm known for bringing new technologies in that are very helpful in a responsible way. I would be happy for that. And then I love building teams too. So probably most of your people won't see this and everything else, but as you're building a company, you're building a whole set of teams, and that's very, very energizing for me. So I love it.
Well, I bet your clients feel it. Maybe not every day, but in the experience of it, that's why you've been doing so great in the last couple of years.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope so. That's our goal. But yeah, often when you're inside, you don't always feel that way. But I appreciate it.
I feel you. We like to think, oh, we're doing our best, and then you hit a roadblock, and you're like, ooh, ouch. Yeah. But we recover and upfront with each other, and always doing our best. Well, that's fantastic. Chuck, do you have anything else as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I've got nothing else. I've got about 250 emails that I need to go through without the help of AI, so I better get going.
Hopefully next time we can go longer, because we can help you with that ahead of time. Appreciate it, Chuck.
I hope so.
Oh, that's awesome.
We'll see you guys at Orion for sure. We'll chat.
Yeah, awesome. Well, have a great weekend, everyone. Really appreciate the time with you too.
All right.
Thank you, guys. This is great.
Thanks, Mark. This was fantastic.